But what really happened there? It was after this question that my former classmate's face changed. A small kitchen that has been in need of at least minor repairs for years. My old friend and classmate and I are sitting at a table, eating, having a few drinks. We haven't seen each other for several years, and finally, as they say, we met. He recently moved from his hole closer to civilization, and settled, by the way, very close to me. So we met by chance in the store. Without thinking twice, they bought a bottle of good cognac, a couple of chocolates, and went to my place to drink tea. In a warm conversation, I learned a lot about my school friend, and I told him a lot. They laughed, recalled the past years of classmates, discussed who is where now, what they are doing, and so on. Well, as it usually happens. Many of them, of course, stayed in the same place, in the village where our youth was spent. "Listen, how's Lek?" I asked with a smile. "Punts or something?" Yes, that's the one. He's been dead for a couple of months." Sighing, the interlocutor replied, "What are you talking about? How's that?" Yes, there was such a story that the whole village was on its ears. Sergei's face has changed a lot, and suddenly there was no trace of that cheerful peasant sitting opposite. It seemed like he remembered something that he really didn't want to remember. He took out a cigarette from the pack and held a burning match to it with a trembling hand. That's why I moved here, away from the hole I spent half my life in. And something was happening there that God forbid you to see and hear. Letting out bitter smoke, he began his story. I can't say right away that I couldn't believe him, although at first I even thought that Sergei had drunk a little too much and was already starting to talk nonsense. In general, the story will continue from his words. Then I was still working, let's say in law enforcement agencies. As soon as I finished the mentoring, they returned me back to the village. They put a precinct officer, allocated a plot, an office, and all the cases. Why I was needed there, I didn't understand in 10 years of work, to be honest. But I'm fine. The experience is dripping, the money is being paid, and it's not bad. Sit in your office and play dancing. Occasionally, of course, there were all sorts of incidents, then drunken fights, then cattle who would take away. Well, what can happen in such a hole? Tell me. They put up a cell tower, so the event of the century was there. For a month, probably. Everyone discussed it. I've been sitting in that office for almost 10 years, and in a couple of months, your mother's anniversary will be celebrated. The village was slowly dying out. More and more houses were empty. Young people left this sewer in a hurry in search of a good life outside, and I had to leave after what we all faced there. Why did you sit there and not? I could stand it because it was such a job. I begged my superiors to transfer me somewhere else, but my attempts were unsuccessful. Well, listen further. Stubbing out his cigarette, Sergei continued, I stayed up late at the station one night. I watched a movie and fell asleep. Can you imagine? I opened my eyes, and it's pitch dark outside. So I packed up, changed my clothes, and stomped home. And it was cold at night. I'm walking down the street, shaking like a dog, and I'm still awake. Masha's gate is open. You probably don't remember her anymore. I thought I'd pass her by at first, but still, when I reached her fence, I decided to go in and find out if the old lady was okay. The first thing that caught my eye was the open door in the house. A whining dog huddled in a dog house. I'm going to the house faster. Maria Stepanovna, are you here? Are you okay? And in response, silence. He shouted again. There was no response. In the end, I decided to go inside the kitchen. First room 2, There is no one. I think strangely, I went down to the garden. I thought maybe he went to the toilet on the street and there was no one in the chicken coop too. I looked as if she had fallen through the ground. Moreover, the light in the house was on, and the bed was not really cold yet. It looked pretty strange, but even so, I decided not to sound the alarm, thinking that the old lady, well, maybe she just went out to someone, you never know, for a pill there, or for some other reason, she forgot to close the door. Anything happens. So I went home. In the morning, the picture did not change. When I went to work, I looked. The gate was also wide open. The door to the house. Anyway, Grandma's gone missing. I spent half a day asking the villagers, but no one saw or heard anything. She seemed to have disappeared through the ground. Really, the house had to be sealed. And in the evening of the same day, call employees from the city. They arrived early in the morning, so I told him, everything is as it is. Anyway, a man has disappeared. There were no signs of forced entry in the house. The gate doors were open. They spent some time at the house and called their honest people. You need to look for a woman. They arrived a few hours later. The search began. There were several volunteers among the locals, and I was one of them. Until nightfall, we combed the entire village and the forest surrounding it from almost all sides. There weren't many people. Of course, who needs to go to such a remote place to find a missing old woman? At least they sent someone. They just found her at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Fortunately, the dogs were with us. They smelled it. Serioja leaned closer to me and spoke softly. The old woman was gutted like a beast. Yes, it is planted on a branch in the middle of a field in a forest plantation. Here's a cross for you. I even have the photos saved. Yes, I'm telling you. I'll show you a puddle of blood under a tree. I almost threw up from what I saw. It would have been nothing, but the old woman was almost at the very top of the tree. We stood under it for maybe 20 minutes in silence. Everyone looked up and was stunned by what was happening. Only the dogs, after running a little, lay down next to each other and whined softly. By the way, the devils have brought her far, probably 5 kilometers from the village, if not more. Well, we thought about it and decided to cut down the tree. Otherwise, there is no way to remove the corpse. After all, the body had to be buried, but it was mutilated beyond recognition. The ribs are all broken, but turned outwards. Exposed organs in already clotted blood, and his head was hanging on his skin alone, and it seemed like it was about to fall off. I've never seen anything like this in my entire career, but there was only one question that bothered me at the time. Who could have done this? After all, a remarkable village is needed to take and lock up a not-so-thin old woman at the top of a tree. There was a height of 35 meters. Bab Masha was not easily removed from the branch and buried the very next day in a closed coffin. I've got more work to do. This is the first time in my entire career that I've encountered something like this. To be honest, I didn't know what to do. There wasn't a single clue. Moreover, I couldn't figure out who could do it in the end. Drag a 90-kilogram body to the very top of the tree. But it gets worse. Just a couple of days later, the same story happened again. The guy disappeared. Valerie. I don't remember my middle name. He lived at the end of Truda Street. Exactly the same scenario. Nastya has an open door and a gate. There were absolutely no traces, and the search continued again. But this time, it was not possible to find the body that day. The man disappeared, And that was it. Sergei bent down to me again and hissed. Believe it or not, but even then I assumed that something abnormal was happening. Well, how did the old woman end up in the tree? Well, it's impossible. You should have seen how high it is. And 3 days later, in the evening, they finally found that guy. The already stiffened corpse was lying in the middle of a field next to a wooded area. The same mutilated body, interestingly, stood cancer among the wheat. After the second incident, I became really scared. People disappear without a trace, and eventually they are found dead. And not just dead, but like this. My first thoughts were that there was some kind of maniac or serial killer in our area. But as soon as I thought about the old woman in the tree, this version was automatically dismissed. That evening, the local men, armed with whatever they could, went out on their own to search for the alleged killer. It certainly looked funny and scary at the same time. A bunch of men with pitchforks, axes, and flashlights are walking around the neighborhood looking for something. Well, I'm with them. Where can you go without me? I'm a fucking cop. First, we went around the whole village, but having found no one, they turned towards the fields. And there we reached the forest of the landing. They combed it too. They were already thinking of leaving. Like one of the men. Involuntarily, he directed the beam of his flashlight towards the field. I swear to God. There, one of the men involuntarily directed the beam of his flashlight towards the field. I swear to God, there was someone there. Guys, look. I immediately turned my head, and someone moved, maybe 5 meters away from us, very close. It was very clearly audible in the silence of the night. We were all staring at it and looking at it, when suddenly, someone's bald head abruptly appeared from the wheat. And after a few seconds, the semblance of a man slowly rose in the beam of the flashlight. Sergei became visibly nervous and took out another cigarette from the pack. In the sense of similarity, and in the direct, it wasn't a man. He whispered, as if afraid that someone would hear him. The creature stood on 2 legs, but it was hunched over heavily. Pronounced cheekbones, a round mouth, from which 6 sharp fangs protruded. The nose is like that of a dead man who has been lying unburied underground for more than 1 year. 2 yellow glowing eyes, without pupils, and a body no different from a human. I do not know how we did not notice it before, while we were walking there. Then, completely incomprehensible things began to happen. Our staring sessions didn't last long. The creature let out a heart-rending scream. The scream, loud and blood-chilling, seemed to spread for miles. After that, it went off the chain, rushing very quickly in our direction. The creature jumped on Petrovich. The light of his flashlight went out, and he collapsed to the ground, choking on his own blood. I still remember that sound. After what we saw and heard, our entire small brave team scattered. And I also took off wherever I could see. Our entire small brave team scattered everywhere. And I also took off wherever I could see, but I couldn't run for a long time. It was dark, and the men with flashlights ran away, and I turned around and ran away. I ran into a forest plantation. Yes, but when I turned back, I didn't see the tree in front of me, and at full speed, I crashed into it on my ass and fell under the tree. My vision doubled and my head hurt a lot. But despite this, I saw that creature. I saw it chasing me, running on all 4s, easily jumping over enemies and fallen trees. Then, sitting under a tree, I was saying goodbye to my life. I'm telling you honestly, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking now I'm going to be killed. There won't be any more Serioja. The precinct officer. The thing attacked me, maybe 20 seconds after I fell. Grabbing me with his hands, he tried to bite me somewhere in the neck area. But with all my remaining strength, I tried to resist. I tried to throw myself off with my hands, but it was damn strong. Growling with displeasure, it soon sank its teeth, not into the neck, but closer to the shoulder. An insanely intense pain spread throughout my body, and I couldn't hold back my scream. I do not know how it happened then. Maybe there was an adrenaline rush. I don't know, but I already missed. Before I could blink, the smoke from the shot had cleared. He was gone. The last thing I noticed was the nearby bushes moving. I lay under the same tree for a while, still not believing what had happened. My shoulder hurt and bled a lot. I tore off a piece of my shirt and tried to bandage it, and it helped a little. Finally, gathering my thoughts, I got to my feet and went home as quickly as possible. Most of all, afraid to stumble upon that entity again. Even I got goosebumps from his story. Finally, he lit the cigarette and continued. I returned to the village in the dead of night. I barely got out of that freaking landing. It's dark. You can't see a damn thing. I really wanted to look into the eyes of everyone who had so decisively organized the search for the so-called maniac. To all those who ran away like rats, leaving me alone. But this is different. Listen further. I went to the police station, changed my clothes, rebandaged my shoulder properly, and went home. Of course, what kind of dream can we talk about after experiencing in the field? I sat in the kitchen for a long time, drinking coffee and trying to find at least some information about the creature I had met. With trembling hands, I described it in the Google search bar, but apart from fictional horror stories, I couldn't find anything. The only more or less similar creature was described in one of the Slavic legends. It was written there that Urka was an evil and thin creature from Slavic mythology. The ancient Slavs considered the act of suicide to be a great sin, and a man who shortened his life of his own free will was doomed to wander at night in the guise of Urka, killing people and sucking their blood, thus trying to replenish his vitality. His eyes glow in the dark. It looks like a human, but the body is disfigured by ulcers and cadaverous spots. This evil spirit hunts only at night and moves very quickly and silently, watching its victim for a long time. Exactly what I saw. But the most important thing is that in no case should you look at him. You should not turn around. That's all he's waiting for. A person falls into a stupor, and that's it. He does whatever he wants with it. He can talk and confuse his victim. It mainly lives in fields, but in some cases, it can break into a human home. What I read that night almost drove me nuts. But it wasn't just that people came up with this for a reason. Apparently, some people met with him and saw him the same way I saw him. In general, I sat in the kitchen until the morning and did not close my eyes. During the day, I only slept for a few hours at work, and that's it. The next night, and she finally forced me, collect all your belongings and leave as far away as possible from that place, from that field. What happened last night? I asked, interested. There will be a knock on my window in the middle of the night. At first I thought I was dreaming, but when I opened my eyes, I realized the opposite. The knock is so light, followed by quick footsteps on the street. And again there was a knock on another window. When I opened my eyes, I already guessed who it was. But Leshta Puntov's voice took the bad thoughts away from me. Exhaling with relief, I went to the window and looked out into the courtyard. Well, where are you? Open it. I could hear it from the street, but I'm going to make a phone call. I didn't see him through the window. and his voice could already be heard from the direction of the veranda. My brain was slow to think. I went to the veranda and almost opened the door. In time, I saw a limb knocking on the window, which I knew well. Everything inside me instantly tightened, as if I were being shoved into a huge vice. "Well, what are you opening or not?" Leshka's voice could be heard from the street, and that creature was standing under the door. "How does this happen?" I asked in surprise. "Here's a cross for you, and let everyone spit in my face if I'm not telling the truth. There's a reptile standing there and talking in Leshkin's voice, you know?" It was definitely Urka, because everything that was written in the article was real. But it also said, how could he be chased away? What is he afraid of? And how? Don't be afraid of fire more than anything else in the world. I ran into the kitchen. It's been knocking on the window all this time, and he tried to persuade me to open the door for him. But I wasn't being provoked, and it's like it's feeling it. She started acting more aggressively, hitting the windows harder, banging on the door so that it shook, growling at me in her real voice. I tried to build some kind of torch in the kitchen with trembling hands, wrapped an old t-shirt on a mop, poured solvent over it, and quickly struck it off with a match. The creature on the street was already going crazy, banging on the door, muttering something to itself, sometimes peering into the windows. The main thing is not to look at him, because that's all he's waiting for. With these thoughts, I ran to the window, quickly opened it, and threw a burning mop at the creature. And just as quickly, closing it, I backed away. Urka, seeing the flames, very quickly left my yard, climbed over the fence near the garden, and disappeared into the night darkness. The very next day, I had to call my superiors and ask them to transfer me to another place. Otherwise, I will write a report on my own. I didn't want to sit in that hole. The transfer was refused, so I had to write a report. Don't you regret it? Honestly, not a bit. Thank God, everything is quiet in my city. And, by the way, after I moved, I called my neighbor in the village. So he told me that his dog was torn at night. And once he saw someone walking in the yard of my house, he's knocking on the windows. It's creepy. That's not the word. I sold the house, by the way, for pennies, of course, but I sold it. He killed Alyosha with the third one. That's what he was doing when we first met him in the field. That's the way it is, friend. Okay, let's probably have another one. Yes, I'll go. It's getting late.